Southeast Asia was the original Garden of Eden, and the floods were the force that pushed people out of the Garden of Eden. Oppenheimer's writings, In the Garden of Eden in the East, 1997. In Genesis 2:8, God planted a garden in the east, in Eden, and he placed the man whom he created. And in Genesis 11:2, and time passed, after they departed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they lived there. Single quote. The land of Shinar is identified as Mesopotamia. The name may have come from the Hebrew Shin Naharot, 2 rivers, the Hebrew Shin Arim, 2 cities, or the Akkadian Shumaru. The Mesopotamians were a spread from Southeast Asia, east, caused by the catastrophe and the rapid rise in sea level in Sundaland, they departed from the east. Therefore, the origin of their land, which is Eden, is in Sundaland, the garden in the east, in Eden. In Genesis 2:9, the Lord grew every tree that was pleasant to look at and good to eat. The tree of life is also in the center of the garden, along with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Single quote. In Genesis 2:19-20, in that land God created every land animal and every bird in the sky, and gave it to man how to call it. Whatever living being a human calls it, that is his name. Humans gave names to all livestock, birds of heaven, and all animals, but Adam could not find a suitable helper for him. God created the Garden of Eden especially for Adam, the first human, who had been created by him. Thus, the Garden of Eden was infinitely perfect. This garden provides beauty and sustenance, being a place for every tree, pleasant to look at and good to eat, and a source of fresh water from the river to drink. The Garden of Eden cannot be found yet because everyone has been looking in the wrong place. In his hypothesis, the authors identified the location of the Garden of Eden as a vast plain surrounded by mountains in the southern part of Kalimantan Island, as shown in the image below. The Indonesian territory in Kalimantan covers 2/3 of the island of Kalimantan. Famous for its tropical forests, rich natural resources, and a variety of exotic, endemic flora and fauna, Kalimantan provides a unique, unexplored world of its own. The region has a number of nature reserves to protect its unique flora and fauna. Kersikluwe is the place for the black orchid, Calongania pandurata, which grows very rare, located in the upper reaches of the Mahakam River, East Kalimantan. Bontang, in Kutai Regency, has rare flora and fauna. Kutai National Park near Bontang is well worth a visit to see the sights, especially in Brazbasa. Tanjung Puting National Park in central Kalimantan is a flora conservation site. The area, which is hypothesized to be the Garden of Eden, is inhabited by Dayaks, the original inhabitants of Kalimantan. The central part of the area is covered by tropical forest, which produces rattan, resin, and valuable timber such as ironwood and meranti. The lowlands in the south are dominated by peat swamps that intersect many rivers. The climate in this region is wet weather in the equatorial zone with 8 months of rainy season and 4 months of dry season. The rainfall is 2700-3400 and with an average of 145 rainy days each year. Volcanoes that are scattered in this area include Kenkabang, Semeayang, Liangpahang, and Ulugadang. The Meritus Mountains are located along the eastern part of the region. The mountains have misty peaks, crossing rivers, dense forests, steep valleys, and jagged karst formations. These mountains are inhabited by Dayak Meritus people who are semi-nomadic, with strong customs and religion, and play sacred music. The description above shows that the area deserves to be called the Garden of Eden as in the Bible. The Bible says that a river flowed out of Eden, and so that something seldom happened to that river. In particular, it is divided into 4 heads, which are separated at the downstream side and originate in one river. Almost all rivers start from one source or originate from multiple sources, tributaries. The verb in Hebrew is medium and not imperfect. Also, a noun phrase at the beginning of a verse is unusual. Furthermore, the words, and from there, come before the verb, separate, indicate that this verb has no subject. The discrepancy is felt because the interpretation is verbatim. The medium form of the verb implies that the words are in a phrase. A river flowing out of a region, Eden, can be interpreted as a hydrographic region, a hydrological area, or a watershed, das. The next phrase reaffirms this interpretation. From there it is divided, and into 4 heads it can be interpreted as, which consists of 4 main sub-watersheds, sub-regions. This phrase does not appear to be found in the original language of the verse. Thus, The verse can be interpreted as, the hydrological area of Eden consists of 4 main sub-watersheds. The designation of the biblical rivers is thought to derive from their geographic alignment. The numbering of the rivers is also in order, from west to east. The present simple form of the verb indicates that the condition has not changed over time. The 4 rivers are identified as Kahayan for Phison, Kapis for Gian, Burrito for Hidakal and Negara for Parrot as seen in the image above and discussed below. In Genesis 2:1-1-2, the first name is Phison, meanders through all the land of Cavala, where there is gold, and gold from the ground is fine. There is Bedalok and gemstone. The Hebrew name for Phison is which means ascent, and can be rooted from which means to throw, scatter, or turn. When applied to a river alignment, it means that the river is scattered, biased, or bends. Looking at the geography of the area, the Kahayan River turns westward, when viewed from the downstream. Around the middle of the Kahayan River, the river is meandering. The meandering river indicates that the topography of the area crossed by the river is flat and tends to be used as a community center. Thus, Cavala could be in this place. Cavala is described at length in the Bible compared to other places in Eden, implying that this place is the most important or most inhabited. This place can be easily reached from the south coast via the Kahayan River for outsiders to visit. The current capital of Central Kalimantan Province, Palangkaraya, is located in this area as well. The Bible says that there is gold in Cavala and that gold is good. The Kahayan River is famous for its gold mining. A place called Gunungmas in the middle of the Kahayan River is rich in gold and several other minerals such as silver, copper, iron, zinc, lead, platinum and zircon. Currently, the gold reserves in the area are around 45 million tons. Apart from several other classic names, Kalimantan Island was once nicknamed Nusa Kencana, which means Golden Island. Perhaps its location in Gunungmas because it is easily accessible from the south coast via the Kahayan River. Gold and zircon are abundant in southern Kalimantan and are the mainstays of the region at present. The Bible mentions Bedalok as a product of Cavala. The Hebrew word Bedalok is thought to have come from Ba-dal, which means to divide, in various literal or figurative meanings, separate, distinguish, differ, choose, etc., or from foreign words. Bedalok is one of the few words in the Bible whose meaning is unclear. According to the Septuagint, is a carbuncle, red gemstone, or crystal, according to other sources, pearl, or some kind of rubber. The latter is more likely, given the various forms of the Greek words bedella, bead, ya and bedelion, bead, lian, a semi-transparent rubber oleo resin. Southern Kalimantan is known as a producer of natural rubber latex known as jaluting. Malaysia, jalutong, tapped from a tree of the same name, Daira SPP, and is the largest exporter of this commodity in the world. Its natural distribution is local spread in low-elevation tropical forests that are green all year round. The type of tree that grows in swamps, Daira polyphylla, is an important ingredient in chewing gum. In addition, the sap of jaluting is an industrial material for adhesives, varnishes, racing tires, waterproofing and insulation. This area is also famous for its local sapwood trees known as Nyato, or Nyatu Polyquium spp. Its habitat is in the coast, lowlands of mixed dipterocarp, swamps and mountain forests. The Dayak people in the area use the sap of the Nyatu as raw material for making handicrafts, from the type of tree, Nyatu, that is only found in this area. The Bible also mentions a gemstone, a product of Cavala. The Hebrew word in the Bible is sho, ham from the unused root probably means to blanch, gems, or precious stones. The story of Kalimantan as a rich source of gemstones has achieved worldwide fame. Kalimantan, as it was known in the past and by the West, is indeed a natural source of gemstones and has been well documented in many literatures. A metis or local name Kekubung, purple jewels, is particularly popular in southern Kalimantan. A place called Martapura, which is located in this area, is known for its gemstone industry since time immemorial. Zircon. Gemstones with natural colors varying from colorless, yellow gold, red, brown, blue, and green, are abundant along alluvial deposits of inland rivers in southern and western Kalimantan, as a byproduct of gold mining activities. In Genesis 2:13, and the name of the second river is Gihon, the same that it winds through the land of Cush. The Hebrew name for Gihon is Icho, N or Jiko, N, which means to spray, can come from the primitive root yak or go, ak, which means to spray water, to spray, dragged, delivered, or broke. When applied to a river alignment, this could mean that the river is many divided, many apart, many divided, or many branches. Looking at the geography of the area, the Kapis River evenly branches into three tributaries that look like a spray. At the confluence of its tributaries and some distance downstream, the part of the Kapis River meanders. Cush could be here and is the second important place after Kavala. In Genesis 2:14, and the name of the third river is Hiddekel, it flows before Ashur. The Hebrew name for Hiddekel is Chiddekel, which means fast, or streaked out, possibly from Chad Dakel, meaning sharp and fast arrow, Kylan Delich, or a foreign word. When applied to a river alignment, this could mean a fast arrow trajectory, bolted along and direct passage, or simply a long and direct course. Looking at the geography of the area, the Burrito River is long, direct and almost straight. The verb flows instead of meanders is used as in the other two rivers, implying that the river is direct or straight. The Bible says that the river Hiddekel flows in front of Ashur. The Hebrew word kidma can mean in front of, facing, or on the east side. So, apart from flowing before the Ashur, the phrase can also be interpreted as flowing to the east of Ashur. In Genesis 2:14, the fourth river was Parat. The Hebrew word for Parat is para, which means to cut apart. When applied to river alignments, this can mean stray or take. Looking at the geography of the area, Sungai Negara is a branch or tributary of the Burrito River. The Bible reduces the description of this river, without an explanation of its alignment or the name of a nearby place, and puts it in the last order. This could mean that Parat is the least important river compared to the other three rivers in the region. Parat is commonly associated with the Euphrates River in Mesopotamia, the way the Greeks pronounced the Hebrew word para. Where the first syllable only helps so that the double consonant sounds. In addition, Parat is likened to Puratu in Syria and Euphratu in ancient Persia. Names similar to this can be found in various places. A name cannot be proved by just the similarity in its utterance, and sometimes the places are very far apart. Several of the same names have appeared in history around the world. Geography has provided many examples of transferring names from one place to another along migration lines. Therefore, it is quite possible that a name can be carried by the tribes that gave birth to it or that it loves, to become the same name in its new place. Noah's flood. The narrative of Noah's flood is found in Genesis 6-9. The narrative shows that God wanted to return the earth to its pre-creation state by giving a flood so that it flooded the earth, because of the crimes of humanity, and then made it again using the microcosm of Noah's Ark. Noah in Hebrew is Noach from the root NW or in spoken Aramaic. It is likely that Noah and Manu, the names of the flood heroes in Indian tradition, are the same individual. Manu, like Noah, is said to have built an ark in which 8 people were saved. Manu and Noah are both post-flood ancestors of all mankind. The story of Noah's flood in Genesis fits the myth of the flood of Gilgamesh so close that there is little doubt that it originated in Mesopotamia. The word Manu is related to the Germanic Manus, the founder of the nation of West Germany, mentioned by the Roman historian Tacitus in his book Germania. Manus is also the Lithuanian name for Noah. The same name is even reflected in Menes in Egypt, founder of Egypt's first dynasty, and Minos, founder and first king of Crete. Minos is also mentioned in Greek mythology as the son of Zeus and the ruler of the sea. Anu was found in Sumer as the god of the firmament, and the rainbow was also called the Great Bow of Anu, which seems an obvious reference to Noah. In Egyptian mythology, Nu was the god of the waters who sent puddles to destroy mankind. In the folklore of southern Kalimantan, Maharaja Banu was the first human to inhabit the area. Sanskrit Manusa, Indonesian human, Swedish Maniska, the ancient East German language Mana and English man are closely related, which means human. Native Japanese tribes are called the Ainu, a word which also means "human." In the Sioux language, there is the word min, which means "water." In the Assiniboine language, Minetoba means "watery pasture." However, this word may also have come from the Cree and Ojibwe Salto languages, which means "place of the Great Spirit." Manitou, Great Spirit, is the supreme god in Algonquins. The name Managua, the capital of Nicaragua, comes from the Nahuatl Managua, which means "surrounded by a pool." The Kawi Banu language and the Dayak language Burrito Banu mean water. There is Ino, the goddess of the sea in Greek mythology, and the Greek word Naiad, which means river fairy. Furthermore, Baruna or Waruna in the Indonesian archipelago, who is given the nickname God of Water, is the ruler of the seas and oceans, which is then considered a manifestation of Brahma in Dharma mythology. The Sanskrit word for ship is nau. This root word has been developed even in English into words such as navy, nautical, nausea, and so on. In Norwegian mythology, Njord is the god of ships, living in Notodden, the port of ships. In this language, the syllable "noa" is related to Icelandic which means "ship." As such, Noah and his great flood are not only remembered in the ancient traditions of all peoples, but his name is also part of and in various ways embodied in the language of his descendants. The sequences are less visible and often nearly lost, so they are sometimes linked speculatively and may be mistaken, but the correlations are too much to be said of coincidence, so they are evidence of historical floods that have occurred around the world.